Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful. A'udhu billah shaitan rajim. May God protect us from the cursed one and unnecessary ignorance. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. All praise due to the Lord of the worlds. Rabbi fearly, my Lord, forgive me for all the sins I am conscious and unconscious of. Ihdina Sirata Mustaqim. May God guide us to the direct path. So, hello everyone. This is going to be a more contemplative episode than usual. I'm going to attempt to try to speak slower than usual. And give me a few minutes right now so I can explain to you the context of this lecture. Okay, let's get into it. All right, folks, let me tell you how I'm going to start this lecture. I'm going to start this lecture by telling you that even though I wasn't as a kid, I could have seen myself at that time if somebody was giving a lecture to be like this. What's the term? Like smirky, kind of like to be this kind of like, mischievous. I shouldn't say mischievous, but like I could see myself being that person that if I saw somebody giving a lecture And if somebody asks me like why aren't you listening to that lecture, I'm like, what is that person even talking about? Okay. And because I have this attitude where I could see myself challenging someone and being like, hey, what are you even talking about? Right. I can do that to myself. And for this lecture, that would translate into explaining to you the context of it. Okay. So I'm pretty much like, that's what I was trying to say at the beginning. If I ask myself, what are you even talking about, man? It's like, how would I contextualize? And pretty much it's another way of saying I've been introduced to an idea in my inner realms, and I'm trying to introduce you to it. So I will contextualize this that if, a younger, more arrogant version of myself complained about or challenged me as if like, hey man, what are you talking about? I will say I am talking about one of the most important things to consider as a human being for the human species. I am talking about a rare moment, and I don't know how I have found this moment, but I found it and I'm sharing it. It's that moment when somehow consciousness has an ability to glimpse into an infinity of viewpoints. And I'm going to explain this to you. You see, ladies and gentlemen, you have an advantage. You have a very hilarious advantage right now. You have someone else discussing these topics. I want to speak about how the fear of the body, this is how I will contextualize this lecture, that there are outer fears, such as the fear of a temporary body and what's going to happen to it. Now, I am that person in human history saying that I don't believe the mind fears death. I believe the mind fears infinity. I am making that claim. I've made it in so many previous lectures, but I'm doing it again. And so, this lecture, keep in mind, it's about our species' ability to glimpse, which means for one instance, to realize that there is an infinity of viewpoints. And what happens then? And I am here to speak to those humans, not those humans that are afraid of the finite, but this lecture is for those humans that are afraid of the infinite. And you may even question, like, how can I even talk about infinity so casually? And I will tell you, because I took a samurai approach. The samurai in their code of conduct called Bushido, Hagakure, written by Miyamoto Tsunamoto. Okay, it is said that the samurai that is dead to itself cannot die. That means the samurai were fearless warriors because they were instructed to die to themselves. Now, something hilarious is that being born a sort of introverted, shy person on Earth, and being having an OCD that also makes you self-exile. So I am someone who strangely, in my childhood, my personality was not amplified. It was the opposite. Okay. Which means I have, in my youth, more silently observed than rather participated in the moments. Okay. But there, I cultivated something by doing that. Okay. And also a decade of this project. But I'm trying to tell you that, dear listeners, my fellow human beings, it's not often somebody talks about why we're afraid of infinity. And I've thought about this very deeply. I've thought about it to a point where everything I find, do you know how I would categorize my soul? If somebody's like, Mr. Within, what were you doing with your channel? I would say it was pretty much me. Imagine like a young child, like a toddler, discovers, what do you call it? Discovers something for the first time and goes and shows it to the parents. Now, for me, I consider myself this. Hear me out here. This is not in any way metaphysical or deep. I'm just saying it in the truest sense that I see it. And the truest sense that I see it is that I am a child of the human species. That means I am a child of the human species. I don't think there's a better way to say it. I'll probably give a lecture on this. That we're all children of the human species. All right, folks, let's get into it. So, a human being begins talking by piercing the void through a world. And so, I guess in any situation, it's like I'm going to try to explain to you how understanding can take place. That the aim of human species is not knowledge, it is truly understanding. And once you understand this, the game changes, its implication, its significance changes. So I find that the biggest priority of every conscious human being would be to understand reality. To understand reality means to discover the utility of situations. Sorry, guys, I just need some sort of heavy going into a portal kind of song. Just give me a second. There's one song, guys, that I've talked and given the deepest, said the deepest things in. It's this. This song has been my companion in so many moments. All right. Anyways, in the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful, in the honor of the system admin of this existential system we're all in the honor of my species that has not awakened yet, and in honor of the future generations that will astonish us regardless, and in honor of all those human beings that have lived so far. I feel that our ancestors did not live for just a biological expression. I deeply believe that bodies live for bodies and minds live for minds and souls live for souls, eventually leading to a point where worlds are living for worlds. Okay? Right now, we are in a very unique situation as a species. Now, I don't know who I am, that I suddenly find myself holding a microphone and talking about this stuff. I really don't know why. Okay, but something is pulling me to do this. And what I have found that is really of concern to me is that, you see, when a person lives in life, their mind generates models of success and failure. Now, if an individual fails, yes, it's heartbreaking. But what is more heartbreaking is if your species fails. That means it doesn't matter if seven, or it doesn't matter if a bunch of individuals, succeeded in life, if the species fails. So at some point, my logic cannot avoid a macro responsibility for the human being. Okay, so what that means is you're listening to a human being that has thought about individual reality to the degree that he cannot avoid its collective implication. Okay. So every time, every moment I'm trying to solve a problem for myself, I ask myself, yo, what are the problems for my species? Every time I find a solution for myself, I ask, what are the solutions for the species? Every time I envision a probability to reality, I wonder what is the implication for that for the species. You see, the human mind cannot ignore compartmentalization. It cannot avoid, it has discovered number theory, and it cannot avoid how we are identifying as an individual because we're separating ourselves from everything. Do you understand? That means, like, if we were like trees, it would be very difficult to say if we're not one with the earth. Do you understand? But we are creatures physically designed to roam the surface of this planet. And this planet is very strange. It's like the whole sphere lives for its surface, it seems. Do you understand? I don't know about inner worlds of the planet and all of that. In my science fiction, I've brushed upon it, but I don't want to get into it too much. For me, the point of life is not the discovery of like 1,000 other rooms. It's to figure out what to do in this world room we're in now. Okay. And for me, when I look at my species, I'll be honest, guys, this might sound bizarre, but since 2014, okay, I have had a sort of, this is going to sound so bizarre, but I've had a sort of a paternal relationship with the idea of humanity. What I mean by that is that I feel, how do I say it? I'm like 33 now, but compared to 1,000 years in the future, I'm old as fuck. I'll get to that in the chat section. Somebody's talking about like alien invasions. I'll get to that, folks. I'll get to that. But we gotta the thing I have learned, I don't know how I learned this. Maybe it's because of, again, you know how it is. There is this thing. There is this thing, folks, that um I don't know why, as a kid, when there was this show Dragon Ball Z, which was designed to make kids eat vegetables. People are not going to believe this, but go read about it. There was the introduction of these two archetypes, and the most fascinated by archetypes are children. Okay, because they're getting introduced to it for the first time. In my youth, I got introduced to this show called DBZ, this Japanese kind of animation show. I was very young. Okay, and in it there were two characters. There was one character which was the incarnation of the values of the heart, and there was another character which was the incarnation of the values of the mind. Okay, and what I mean by this is simply this: that there was a character called Vegeta and there was a character called Goku. Okay, and Goku was sincere, honest, righteous person, no ego, and always surpassing his own limits. He had no ego because he was always breaking his ego and surpassing his ego, surpassing the limits of his ego. Okay, but there was another character called Vegeta that, in some sense, couldn't make the same progress. Do you know this character Vegeta was the actually embodiment of ego, okay, in the show. And he's this guy, this kid who was born as a prince of like this, like of their species in the show, right? And he has this ego. He constantly says Saiyan pride. Do you know what I mean? And this character is not a pleasant character. It's a very kind of it's like a character that has been introduced to evil on in an overpowered way. But there's another character. The character Goku has always overpowered everything in his reality. Okay, Anyways, what I'm trying to say is that this character Vegeta sees that he can't make the same natural progress as this character called Goku. He goes into this capsule chamber and he increases the gravity ridiculously and he trains there until he can move perfectly in it. Okay? So for me, I feel my introversion and shyness, which I hated for many years of my life, do you know, which I regretted. And if I had a time machine for some time, I would have gone back. But now I've accepted everything in such a way that it doesn't bother me. Okay, but I'm telling you, it was as if my inability to express in the outer realms had only given me a choice to express in the inner realms. And in the inner realms, you're not a person, you're an awareness to form. Now, anyways, guys, where I'm gonna keep going with this, okay? So the whole point of it was that we're looking at the human species, we're realizing that we are temporary beings that need to complete our performance. Okay. um Let me say it differently. In honor of everything that is intelligent in reality, I have reached a point where I humanity's future has become more fascinating than any sort of spiritual insight. It has become clear to me that this species is has a task of self-management in a system that is managed by that which is beyond itself. Me personally, the whole point of it, when I was saying some things, that you first you're looking at your problems, then you're looking at the problems of the species. It's how a person contextualizes reality. Me personally, for me, there's four levels to life. Okay, four levels to this world room. Okay, this system we're in, right? And keep in mind, you're simulated in this system. Meaning is simulated, your words are simulated, your actions are simulated. Do you know? Now, if you say, is truth simulated? Truth, actually, the medium that knows truth is true beyond language. You see, folks, I want to explain to you how your body is here to deal with the finite conditions. Your mind at some point in this life will suddenly snap out of whatever that's, distracting it, and it's going to realize that the mind can simulate various kinds of meaning into the same moment. Now, sure, there is something called coherent pluralism, which means that multiple truths can be true. But for me, I think multiplicity has a different place. I think that sometimes when a person gets introduced to a bunch of ideas, they have to compartmentalize it to truly understand it. But where are they compartmentalizing it, and how they have figured out the world so far? So I'm going to tell you how the idea I'm sharing here. Here, let me bring the notepad. Let me be that guy who writes it down. Okay, guys, look at the screen. You'll kind of see what I'm sharing here. So guys, when I try to solve any problem or try to comprehend anything, it's like I pay attention to it and my mind constantly throws waves upon it. Okay? So I guess the first wave of thought, a species glimpse into an infinity viewpoint, I would say we come to the question, how can a human glimpse into an infinity of viewpoints? Do you know what that means? It means like this question is like Charmander, and the previous question was like Charmeleon or something. Or if the question is finally Charizard, this is like Charmeleon or something. I don't what it's been a while. But I'll say anyways, how can a human glimpse into an infinity of viewpoints? Now I'm this because I've experienced this. When the human mind realizes that they are choosing the context that activates the concept, therefore they can technically choose any context to activate the concept. Okay, now in theological terms, this would mean like your soul activates something, which means it gives it a spirit too. Like, we got to really understand, folks, that when they say spirit and when they say soul, these are two different ideas. Okay, you pretty much have to, like, based on illuminationist theory at least, the idea is that God is the light of lights, the soul is the shadow of God, and the spirit is the shadow of the soul. Their soul is activating that concept in that context to the degree that it's like having a physical influence on them. This was a very important idea. I just, anyways. So going back to this, so how can a human glimpse into an infinity of viewpoints? I'm saying that me as a human being personally, I came to a moment where I felt like life became meaningless because it could have been given any meaning. Okay, so I realized my inner realms, the abstraction it has no limits to some degree. It can end up just endlessly being abstract. And at the same time, I'm like, look at this. Even though we're a physical being in a physical world, because the nature of giving meaning to something is a mental act, it's like I'm saying that human meaning equals fiction, human um phys- human matter equals nonfiction. Okay, so this is very important. Now, nonfiction, fiction, this is a dualism. It's important to consider that too. It's also important to consider when the atheist and theist are debating, they're pretty much fighting for two sides of a coin. Do you know? Because in this world, for human ideology, for language, it's all dualistically contexted. You understand duality, you understand like 80% of how all knowledge is explained. Contextualized. For example. So, anyways, guys, when I'm saying, okay, let's forget that. I'm just saying that the mind can forge an infinitude of contexts to the concept of itself. Now, that's a quote you don't hear every day. So we apply. So you see, folks, pretty much I'm saying if a human being can glimpse can glimpse at an infinitude of contextual options, if a human being can glimpse at infinity, so can a species. Now we have 8 billion humans on Earth. If each if each if each has an ability to infinitely contextualize, if each has an ability to infinitely contextualize their conceptions, we pretty much have 8 billion biological machines that can modify the copy pasted. We pretty much have 8 biological machines that can modify, that can subjectively modify pasted forms of their world. Guys, I just created a new word, infinity. What I'm trying to say is that there's 8 billion human beings on the planet, 8 billion biological intelligences that can copy paste their perception of reality and subjectively modify it in infinite ways. Ladies and gentlemen, your mind is the abstraction and the abstract modifiable extension to reality. Check this out. So I've written here, we pretty much have 8 billion biological machines that can subject a rendering of their sensory perceptions into so many variations that awareness technically can choose from infinite layouts of mind. So guys, the mind is an all you can eat buffet of infinite constructs. Behind your eyes, the world can move in so many ways that reality does not permit. It's funny. The human being is an ability to separate forms and also allow these separate forms to interact. That's what the brain is doing, folks. Your brain is separating reality from itself, so it's kind of like dividing reality, okay? And your awareness now has an ability of seeing the undivided reality compared to its divisions. Therefore, it's starting a sort of that's the birthplace of infinity. I just explained the birthplace of infinity for you in the mind of man. Guys, I just wrote something in the chat section. Somebody said threat of other species want this planet. And then I've written in the chat section, no species can own this planet. The world doesn't belong to anything in it. This is my firm view. It's being the management, like imagine they're like, yo man, who's managing Earth? The management of this sector is not in the hands of man. Man is just a conscious allowance. It's like it's God's mercy that we can notice God. It is the biggest mercy. Because the point of it is, what are we living for? We're living for the greatest values to reality. What that means is your mind forges perception every day, and I want you to, at some point, pick up your perceptions and start training to see if they break in your hands or not. You know, in some sense, I'm telling you that your mind is being a blacksmith of the sword that your body holds. Do you know? And what I mean by this is that to be a human being is not to just be responsible for a physical existence. It is also to be responsible for a psychological existence, and the purpose of one's psychological life is to realize that consciousness, awareness, is an ability to, in some sense, access a world. And so you are, in some sense, a world accessor. You know, you have access to reality. This is it. Now you're here. Now the question is, how do you play the game? But first, you got to notice it as a game. You see, folks, our minds think of it this way: that you're like Mr. Within. Make this easy. Like, just explain the mechanism, explain the mechanics of the mind. You know, and I'll be like, okay, like if I had to, it would be like this. First, you have to understand that the mind is the result of consciousness interacting in an unknown event. So it's kind of like we don't know who we are. We don't know what this world is. We don't know how it's happening, but it's happening and we're happening, and that's the starting point of the situation, right? Like we're applying critical thinking here, right? So we got to start from scratch, and excuse me. All right, folks, to keep going. Sometimes when I give these lectures, I feel like one of those like Amazon explorers with a machete, like cutting through the vines. Pretty much, I'm trying to tell you, you got to understand the context, then all the concepts in that context become clear. Okay. And so the context of this question, a species is glimpse into an infinity of viewpoints. It's simply this notion that you have this biological organism appearing in this natural ecosystem, but it appears in an unnatural sector of it. And so the way children are being raised, they're being introduced to man made laws before they're being introduced to natural laws. Do you know? There was a time where, like in Canada, I don't know if people know this, but in parks, climbing trees has become illegal, which this broke my heart. I was like, what? And then I asked myself, is there something to it though? Could this be a multi-leveled reason? Could there be a multi-leveled reason to this? And then I realized it's kind of like the whole point of the city is forget natural values and work for this unnatural thing. So the reason civilization hasn't advanced is because they've made it so unnatural. Do you understand that to be natural is to be even more advanced than the unnatural misdirection? Right? What I'm trying to say, folks, is we are on a planet, there's 8 billion of us. In front of our eyes, yes, we're all physical beings with different DNAs just hanging out. But behind our eyes, what we are is a force. And I firmly believe, like if somebody was like explain the body and mind quickly, I would say body, life form, mind, life force. And so the mind is a life force. And the whole point of life is what is the where how does this force activate? Okay, that means if you being a unique DNA is like you being a rare instrument, and we're like, okay, how does this instrument activate? And now this is the bizarre thing, that if you really wanted to truly be spiritual, you'd realize it doesn't activate by you. Okay, that means it's like this whole time it hasn't just been man in an empty world. It has been man in a a simulated world in the presence of an original being. Okay, we're not just on Earth. All our minds, as far as it's concerned, awareness is in the presence of a conscious admin. You see, your body cannot be more than an object. Your mind sees how your body is separate from the world, creates an individual subjective position, but then realizes the individual subject and the individual, excuse me, the inner subject and the inner subjective world, the inner world and the inner self are pretty much both events in awareness. Okay. So, what that means is that behind your eyes, you're not technically even an idea of self. The ego is not necessarily a character, but for the sake of people being able to talk about it, we say the ego is a character in a story. For me, I'm like, okay, a human being can glimpse into an infinity of viewpoints. They can realize, they can contextualize life from so many different angles. In the same way, you can pick up an object and look at it from different angles. You can pick up a subject and look at it from different angles, right? So, one concept can have many different kinds of contexts. One context can have many concepts within it, do you know? At the same time, many concepts can have many contexts, and many contexts can have many concepts. We're giving a sort of freedom in the wilderness of how the geometry of the inner realms can actually expand itself, you know? So, to continue, now what happens to the human psychology when it notices that meaning can be technically there's an infinite multiple choice for the free will, or what we consider the conscious controllable domains of our reality, you know? In some sense, like, how do we select out of infinity? And me personally, guys, this viewpoint was the viewpoint that triggered me into discovering the higher power truly for myself. I became religious because I realized my body is going to die one day. It's all about just, you know, trying to not have, like, trying to tell your every cell of your body, like, don't be scared. You know what I mean? But at the same time, then it comes to the mind, and my mind was like, yo, man, there's infinite ways you can extract meaning. Do you know, in the same way you can write something in AI and it keeps giving answers infinitely, in the same way the human mind can forge infinite meaning, right? And so I could look at this, an object, and I could be like, why am I calling it a tree? I could call it anything else. So this ability of the human mind to notice that it is giving the context to the concept makes the human being even doubt itself, like, am I even worthy of giving my own meaning? you know and I'm telling you, ultimately, the human being, this might sound strange, but we may think that we're like cats, okay? Or I should say, the human being may think that it's an independent agency, but I'm telling you, we're not designed to be independent. What I mean, we're not designed to be independent, I don't mean in the physical outer realms. I'm not talking about human psychology. I'm talking about that human values are, because they realize they're not the peak, they have a peak. It's like when you realize you're not your greatest version right now, greatness still exists for you. If the future generations in advance try to tease me and ask me, hey, Mr. Within, in 2025, you know, what was so great about, being in an unadvanced civilization. And I would look at them and I'd be like, you guys are missing, you guys don't understand. When you're in an unadvanced civilization, every day you are motivated by greatness. That's the world you're in. That means if they tell me, yo, man, does a human being need therapy? I'm like, no, they need to be motivated by a greater value, by a higher ideal than themselves. Now, I realize human beings have been stripped of their honor. Okay, their honor is just limited to nationalism. Do you understand? But I believe that the species, is waking up to itself. What that means is that I feel that we have been living in such like ignorance that it's like a slingshot, and the slingshot's about to be let go into clarity. And I believe that in the next coming years, we're going to begin to see, and maybe I don't need the credit for it, but I just need it to happen, you know? And I want to see the triggering of every human being on earth suddenly, like how Goku went Super Saiyan. They shift from nationalistic identity to, in some sense, transnationalistic identity or speciesism. And you look in the mirror and you care for that, and then you realize there's 8 billion versions of what you saw in the mirror that you still need to care for. And so the great game of humanity begins. Do you know, for me, what it is that I feel I am doing two things. Even if some people see me as a pioneer of certain ideas that perhaps I was the first person to ever speak about in human history, or to reawaken again, do you know? But anyways, I'm saying none of that matters, because the whole point of it is there's a war going on, do you know? And for me, how do I say it? It's like if they ask me, hey, is the meaning of your life legacy? I'll be like, God knows what happens to the legacy. For me, the meaning of my life is that what resources are available to my consciousness that I can, in some sense, march towards the greatest values. You see, I believe that human beings are not actually motivated by real events. They are motivated by abstract greater probabilities to the current reality they're living in. Do you understand? Do you understand? That means the human psychology is going to understand how important the future is. That means a person's health is not based on just like their body; it's based on their expectation of their own future. That's it. All human health psychology problems are just the person is afraid of the future. They don't get it. They're afraid of how they're living now and what's going to happen to them in the future. All like, because you can't avoid survival. Do you know what I mean? Like, yes, we're a biological being. It's like a bell curve. You're young, energetic, but foolish. At the midpoint, you kind of find a synchronicity of the two, and then you're like wise and low energy. Do you know what I mean? So it's like we're young and then we get old, and in the middle, we're active enough to go do some stuff and then like tap out. Do you know? And for me, I just thought, like, what's the greatest strategy? Give a performance that, in some sense, the future generations cannot not respond to. You don't understand, guys. For me, I am not just giving a talk in the year 2025. I am also simultaneously being an existential event, an energetic event right now. The energetic event is not in time. Time is an interpretation of energy, like every concept that has ever existed. What's going on here is that intelligence is in the room, and it's your intelligence you're starting from. And for me, my body is contexted in a physical world. My mind is contexted in where my awareness is, where my attention is. You might not believe it, but when a person looks at someone and says, I like that person or I dislike that person, what's going on actually is that The mind is simulating a value in the void. It's like your brain overlays past patterns of meaning. It's like your mind, it's like when a person walks into a room that they've never been in before, it's like everything they find in that room is having a comparative meaning in accordance to the room they were in before. But to be a human being is to, in some sense, start from scratch. You understand? That means there's it's like it's a weird time to be alive, but a fascinating one as well. Because we don't know what we are, we don't know where we are, we don't know why everything is happening, but we're still happening and there's a game to play. The advancement of the human species, the march into the future. Every person you have seen, do you understand, they can say whatever, but if you want to know what good and evil is, it's all about what's going to happen in the future. That means evil tries to deny something from the future, good is trying to give something to the future. Evil takes something away from the future, good it tries to give away something to the future. So it has come to my attention that yes, the human being can look at this life and be like, there's so many ideological systems. There's so many ways reality could be contextualized. I could choose to be a simple person. I could choose to walk in like pure complexity. But at some point you just your eyes look at the sky and you somehow you have a feeling of the whole moment and you ask yourself, why this though? And this is where I think it's important for human beings to realize that you have to select something out of this infinity, and then the energy gives it life. Your own energy gives it life. To me, I fundamentally believe human beings are motivated by not what is true to them, what is important for them based on what they want to happen in the future. I don't think human beings are motivated by truth in 2025. I think they're motivated by what their outcome will be. I'm telling you, the mind is playing a future game. The body is just chilling in the present, and the soul is aware of both of them. The seat of awareness is a way you can define the soul, but for a Muslim, the soul is the secret of God, but it is also the amr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is the command of the system admin. Anyways, folks, I've created something. I've also asked AI something, and I'm going to read for you. So it says, so I said to I think my species is in an existential crisis. The species is realizing that there are infinite viewpoints to consider life through. Now, which do they choose? AI is giving me an answer. You've pinpointed a fundamental challenge. The existential crisis humanity faces today is partly because our collective awareness has expanded dramatically. We can now glimpse an infinity of viewpoints, narratives, and possible truths. This can feel overwhelming, and rightly so, because it's unprecedented for humans to confront infinite possibilities all at once. Here's how you might guide yourself and your species through this existential dilemma. One, acknowledge the infinity. Recognize that humans have evolved intellectually and technologically to perceive countless viewpoints. Accept that no single human mind can fully grasp infinite perspectives. Yes. So these we have to acknowledge. This is kind of therapeutic. Then it says to shift from choosing in quotations a single truth to selecting a framework. Humans naturally seek simplicity and coherence. Rather than trying to choose one viewpoint as in quotations ultimate truth, select a framework that allows growth, adaptation, and meaningful coherence. Do you know what this means, guys? This means that if you, for me, this was for me it was an experience. It wasn't just a framework, okay? But it was like a expansion of the truth of my own being. Do you understand? But I'm saying, yes, if you can't, if truth is overwhelming, if infinitude is overwhelming, this AI is saying, just choose a single, just select something, you know. Then it says also consider frameworks like coherent pluralism, which suggests that multiple valid truths can coexist without contradiction. I've rushed upon this before. Yeah, that means, see, guys, it's about our acknowledgement. Like sometimes you could be experiencing something, but how you feel about it is your choice, Embrace dynamic flexibility. Oh, sorry, guys. Uh, there was I jumped ahead. There's another one. Prioritize meaning over absolutism. Encourage your species to focus on choosing viewpoints based on meaningfulness, usefulness, and ethical alignment rather than insisting on absolute correctness. Now, guys, the issue AI is not even considering here is that ethical alignment has to do with the future of the species. The future of the species has to do with the selection of a view of the species. But anyways, let's keep going. The best viewpoints enhance human well-being, enable empathy, and promote sustainability. I mean, the best viewpoints are kind of like everybody calm down and let's build something advanced. I don't think there's a greater attitude than that. Four, embrace dynamic flexibility for humans. Embrace dynamic flexibility. Adopt frameworks and viewpoints that are flexible enough to adapt as human learns more and evolves further. Rigidity leads to conflict. Flexibility allows growth, integration, and understanding. So you see, folks, that um, I think like in one of my earlier talks, I said that the idea of the student and teacher should be destroyed, like is meaningless. And in the future, the educational systems they're just going to be explorers, and they're going to have a ranking system, an endless ranking system. And the whole point of it was that to be an explorer means that you have to be strong enough to step into the uncharted, expansive areas of your own truth. That means you have to care for, like, pretty much I have this view that we're all simulated beings, and those who care for the original are truer than the rest. Anyways, but it's not that they're truer than the rest. The whole point of it is that a simulated being must discover the original. It's like the whole point of even Islam is that it says in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran says, I created mankind and jinn kind for the sole purpose of worshiping me. Do you know what that means? That means we have been designed as entities in a system to notice the system admin, and to have, out of among all the species on this planet, have be bestowed with this ridiculous ability to be aware that we're aware, and by that ability being able to notice the higher power and realizing that in some sense man is technically here to be a vicegerent, a Khalifa on earth, which means he's here to be a reflection or an ambassador of the divine attributes of manifestation, which means man, because he has this original memory of being created by God, which I think is is where the secret of the soul leads. It's like you have an original memory, you're tested in a simulation to see if you remember your original state, and your original state is realizing that the original is not in the simulation, so no simulated act could be equivalent to the original space where the simulation is even existing in. Okay. But anyway, I'm going to keep going, guys. I was reading this. Seek universal principles. 5. Identify common principles like compassion, freedom, fairness, creativity, and responsibility that resonate across multiple viewpoints. They better. These principles provide stability and infinite perspectives. 6. Evolve into a multi perspectival species. Encourage intellectual humility and collective wisdom. Teach the next generations that their minds are built not to hold one single viewpoint rigidly, but to fluidly integrate multiple perspectives as needed. Practical next steps. So, guys, I'm gonna comment here. You see, ladies and gentlemen, this has to do with the style of each soul. My style is I see a great vision, I am called by it, and I march forth. That's the style I have. Okay, do you know? So there's something I see something so important that it just pulls every aspect of my being towards it. Do you know? But I'm saying that as a species, we gotta have this notion of like I'm commenting on this notion of evolving into a multi-perspectival species. It doesn't mean there's gonna be multiple truths. Let me explain why. There can be, but let me tell you why not. Because fundamentally we have to go based on certain lines of thought I have here. The first line of thought I have here is if we take two human beings cannot have a relationship with one another if they don't have the same values. Let's assume this statement is true. Now there's 8 billion human beings, and the relationship of 8 billion human beings with one another is what we call the advancement of civilization and humanity. Okay, so technically, the advancement of civilization equals the advancement of humanity. The advancement of humanity is the relationship of 8 billion beings with 8 billion beings. Okay, with all now, this is where if 8 billion beings are to have a relationship, that technically means 8 billion beings have to have the same value, right? Now I looked at this dilemma in history and I was like, yo, make the advanced civilization, make the greatness of humanity the king that everybody is serving. That means the crown of the human kingdom is on the greatness of humanity's future. Do you know what that means? That means we're all serving a future king, but that king is not a person. It is the idea of the greatest probability of humanity. Ladies and gentlemen, there is one thing that you have always had the permission to fall in love with, and in some sense, it might have been denied to you, but it is the greatness and the glory of your species. We're the human species here. It's like, yo, man, should we all wear the same jersey? No. We just need to look in the mirror and we realize we already are. We're all dressed in carbon. It's like Iron Man suit. It's like, buddy, I'm already in a carbon man suit. Do you know what I mean? So we're already suited up. We're already dressed for the part of being a member of the human species. And you, whoever you are, tomorrow when you go handle your world, just wonder about what hidden greatness is waiting this whole time. That means I will tell you the most therapeutic experience I had in my life were like two incidences. One, where I was looking at my own gravestone in my inner realms. Three was when I felt the future generation, they haven't even been born yet, but the fourth is watching us now. And when you feel that, you will, like, I will tell you, every moment you don't attempt the most advanced option available to you, it's like you're disrespecting the future generations. Let me tell you why. Because our task is to go as far as we can so they can go further. That is our victory as modern human beings. We are no longer fighting a war that is just in the same time era as us. We're fighting for how great can the future become For example, like how many ethics councils all over the world need to be established to, in some sense, come up with countermeasures of how human technology, psychology, and just desire are all being considered as elements in the system's output. I honestly am at a point right now in my life where in my inner realms, I am living in a way more advanced world. My mind is in a way more superior earth, but my body is in 2025. I can feel in my inner realms a humanity that became too smart to fail, too wise to be cruel, too genius to be evil and destroy. It is the greatness of our species. It is moving through our veins right now. You don't understand the potential of how great the lives of the future generations can be. There was a show. This show had a very important influence because like one of my hobbies is I'm a story hunter. For me, like literature has a very important meaning. Even before I realized like the true value of the Holy Quran as a genius, supernatural event in the literary realm. You know, you see, folks, our heart beats not so that we just saw what the world was. You have hands, you have eyes, you have a mouth and ears. You're a being in this reality. And one of the most incredible acts, if somebody tells me, Mr. Within, what is the most advanced thing a human being can do? I would say the most advanced thing that a simulated entity can do, establish a relationship with the original. For me, if somebody's like, how are you governing your values? I would say, like, I, it's ultimately like so I have a relationship of my body with the physical world. I have a relationship of my mind with all the potential variations to the physical world. And then I have a relationship with my soul alone with the system admin. I don't know how to say it. It's as if like whatever I do, I am within the surveillance state of the system admin. And for me, I have lived the life I lived. I have experienced this life as a user, and I have experienced even as a user working with moderators, but I didn't even know. I thought I was working with the system admin, and then I realized that Islam is telling you bypass moderators because they're still simulated, even though they have authority over the simulation, and go directly to the system admin. And ever since I've gone directly to the system admin, the light of my world has been brighter. I don't know how to explain it. If they tell me ever since you started praying, is life better? I'll tell you, it's not that it's just better and I can accept myself easier. It's also brighter. It's as if before, when there was no God, there was a pitch black emptiness behind everything's meaning. Now there is a light in Surah Al Nur in the Holy Quran. God is defined as the light, like it. I don't know how it says it exactly. I'm a visual learner, but the visual of it is that God is the light upon lights. So that means any light entity, it's like it sees God as a greater light. Do you know? So it to me it fascinated me because the solution to the meaninglessness of the world was that its meaning is not administered by us. For me, the biggest realization as a human being was not that I am the most important thing in the world, was exactly the opposite. The day I realized I am not important is the day I realized that which is beyond me. And this was the gift that God gave me by making me a shy, introverted, self exiling psyche when I was young. I felt worthless, but in that worthlessness, I had no bias. I was watching, seeing everything, piercing through the depth of everything purely because I didn't even have confidence to establish myself as a value. It's like when I was young, I hadn't realized, buddy, relax. You're getting to, how do I say it? You're experiencing yourself for the first time too. It's new for you too. Why are human beings so keen on fairness? Because every human consciousness that enters this world deserves to like see it all. Anyways, folks, thank you for listening. I hope this lecture was interesting. There is something AI says here I'm going to read, and then AI says your species is at the threshold of evolving from a mindset of singular truth into an advanced awareness capable of comfortably holding and harmonizing multiple truths simultaneously. The choice is less about selecting one ultimate viewpoint and more about selecting an adaptive, compassionate, and meaningful stance from which infinite viewpoints can be respectively explored and integrated. But guys, the nature of consciousness is because it's like a light emerge, brightening up a world room, right? It's kind of like singular. So you can have multiple truths, but it's in a singular context. You understand? Anyways, this that is in itself its own philosophy lecture. But anyways, guys, the whole point of life is not about philosophy. I'm pretty much telling you there's something more important than the language of ideology. It is what it's pointing to. And just in life, there are moments that we can get overwhelmed by infinity or so many situations, and all that overwhelmment, it's like we think we need to have an answer to all our problems at once. But sometimes this is something therapeutic that I came to understand, that I apply in my own life when I get overwhelmed, which is this realization that take a deep breath and accept that you don't have all the answers, and accept that it's okay. And then just take do one simple thing at a time. If you get too overwhelmed and life is too intense, like, use this protocol. But at the same time, how do I say it, in my inner realms, I've infinity is just possibility of envisioning various forms. It's a space, in front of our eyes. It's like we're a physical being and there's a space to move. Behind our eyes, you're an awareness to how subjective forms appear in a space. And if somebody tells me, like, hey man, visualize an apple hovering in front of you, that apple, my imagination is not in my brain. It has a distance. So my inner space is like this invisible room over my mind, is like this invisible room overlaid on this physical life, okay, this physical space. And how do I tell you, if when I visualize something, it's like in front of me sometimes. It's either above my head or it's in front of me. Anyways, thank you for listening. The whole point of it is that, um, once we reach a powerless state and realize that infinity is the limitation of man's mind, it's in that moment where man realizes his limited ego can't figure everything out. And this is where the idea of self comes to acknowledge that there's a higher ideal beyond it. I'm telling you, where we, even though we live in 2025, we're motivated by the future to come. That's how we've been living this whole time. Anyways, thank you for listening. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful. A'udhu billah shaitan rajim. May God protect us from the cursed one and unnecessary ignorance. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. All praise due to the Lord of the worlds. Rabbi Firli. My Lord, forgive me. My Lord, forgive my species for all the sins they're conscious and unconscious of. Ihdina sarat al-mustaqim. May God guide us to the direct path. May the most advanced guide us in the most advanced way to the most advanced. We have been simulated from an original state. And in this simulated state, it's important how we notice the original and act while we're here and perform. And then at some point, we return to the original. And so, in a world where there is God, there is no death. It's like you're just meeting the system admin of the system. Thank you for listening. I hope this lecture was interesting. Take care.